So it's time to get back to work, right? So let's chat with a guy who never stops, as you can see when you see. Do you see his picture now? You see his garage. You know what I mean. A few little housekeeping items first. We're going to sort of go through some of Scott's setup, what he does, what he's doing these days, and then sort of stop for questions once, and then come back and look at his cart and go through the cart, stop for questions, sort of freewheeling it, but also having sort of a loose structure to everything. And something I also want to mention is that we've got a special announcement coming up October 1st that pertains to filmmaking. And since you've all signed up for this webinar, you will receive that news in your inbox. So stay tuned for that. Keep an eye on your inbox. Scott Harber, let's say a few things about Scott. Scott's a production mixer in Los Angeles who moved through the various realms of production throughout his career, like many of his colleagues in the sound production industry. Scott Harber began his career as a punk rocker. I got to find out the name of the band. Over the course of his nearly 30-year career, Scott has worked on leading TV and film productions such as Borat, Bruno, Barry, Ballers, Bosch, Nocturnal Animals, Get Smart. I think he did the Grimsby Brothers. I'm not sure about that. Hell's Kitchen, Gangster Squad, Wilford, and Castle, to name a few. He owns Dang Me Sound, a production company in Los Angeles. So everybody give a virtual round of applause for Scott. Welcome, Scott.
How do?
Yes.
Glad to see everybody here.
Yeah. So
Glad to be here.
yeah, what's going on, man? What's going on these days? You got all that equipment behind you. Are you getting ready to do something cool?
Well, yeah, like everybody else, been kind of slow last couple months. So I've been basically reformulating a cart, mix cart that I work off of. I'm a production mixer, so I've been more or less designing this cart here out of 80/20 kind of extruded metal. This stuff, like that.
Nice.
It's like Tinker Toys.
Nice.
Like
Perfect.
boy Tinker Toys. It's great stuff. So I've been Mr. Machine Shop guy, building that, and then also doing this little number here. But getting ready to do shows because if I do nothing, it's really unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so
And I
this
could
is where I
tell
put the energy, you know?
just by the way you've hooked your mic up, you've got like you're using a wireless transmitter from a 4071, I believe, and you're going into like a sound devices unit, and then back stream. What are you doing there to get the mic?
So I've got a lav here and a 4071, which is it's kind of our go-to in terms of using lavs. And then I'm transmitting over here to this rack, which is I've got a venue, bunch of electrosonics venues.
Nice.
That then goes via Dante. So I'm running that rack via Dante to this cart, which is the mixer cart. And it's going to what I mix off of, which is a Kantar made by Auton. And then basically what I did is I'm also rolling a Sound Devices mix pre as a backup. And that was the easiest thing. I guess I could have fed Dante to this laptop, but then I get into dongles and all kinds of goofy stuff. So I just ran the USB out to this laptop. So it's never direct. It's never simple. You think it's easy. Just plug a mic in.
Yeah. Well, you can get up and walk around and talk, so that's great. That's fantastic. I want to let everybody know really quickly too that we're recording this for Q&A function. So, and also, this is an educational opportunity to talk to Scott about the things and the workflows and the solutions that he comes up with in the field, because it is a crazy field. You're in different environments all the time and different speech levels. So a good time to learn and a good time to teach the teachers. So the questions are good, so keep them coming. John will let me know when they're there. So you mentioned the 4071. Let's start there. I work for DPA. I'm passionate about DPA. I love our products. So I could say it until the cows come home, and I believe it. But when I work with guys like yourself and girls like yourself, I'm amazed at their moment, their DPA moment, and why it fits into their workflow. We're known for consistency and durability, but that's not only externally, it's also internally in the microphone too. So keeping out structural borne noise, accuracy, dynamic range. All these things are part of what goes into durability and consistency. Talk about the 4071 and how you came about finding it.
Well, I sauntered into DPA land via Simon Hayes, my old utility, and now my boom op, Ben Greaves, who worked with Simon a good chunk. What did we do? We went to a screening of Les Miserables.
Les Mis, yeah, yeah.
And when that film came out, and we just got to talking, and I was like, all right, okay, I'll give it a go. Next round of lavs I get into, so I bought a couple of them, and I really love them. And they sound great, obviously, but aside from that, is they rig really well, which is hugely important, because you can have the best sounding elements in the world, and if they don't mount well or rig well or kind of deal with I don't. It's subtle, but there can be big differences between how microphonic something is, and you've got a little element that's teeny, and managing to pick up the sound as well as not picking up the sound of everything that holds that little element it's not a small trick. I love them, and since then it's just been growing and growing, and kind of as I cycled out other lavs, I've kind of more or less, it's my go-to. There's other lavs and other tools, not everything does all, not every tool does every job, but I love them, and they're definitely where we live now.
And a little pedigree about that microphone too. It's a very, very cool microphone. Strange in some ways. It's got sort of a boost in it, like a 5 dB boost at 4 to 6 kilohertz. So we think you're going to be mounting it under close, so you need to break through all of that material and retain the intelligibility, and it's an omni microphone, we should say. It's got a 144 SPL. It's a core technology mic. It's got an IP58 rating. So all these things go into not seeing the microphone but hearing great sound. And the Simon Hayes thing you alluded to was really cool, because they didn't want to, hey, at the end of the day, it's all about making the performer comfortable, right? Whether you're putting a microphone on an actor or an actress or a performer, if they're hindered by any of the setup, it sort of gets into their vibe. And, using the 4071, I think Simon used it on each shoulder with wardrobe, making swatches so that the performer could sort of feel free to go where they wanted to. And they had something like 78 tracks to mix down just by 1, 2 on every actor. So it won out. Yeah, totally. And you also, how did you not shake left when you were booming Borat? That was a question that I thought of.
Well, what we learned very early on was myself and the one of the directors of photography, Anthony. There was a point in time where you kind of learn where he's going to go, and you learn his jokes a little bit. But we found that it's a natural reaction for people to, when something funny happens, what you do is you look at each other and you share that moment of humor. And that's where at least we found we would naturally laugh. So what we found was, if something funny happened, because one time I looked at him, I could see his eyeball, because he's shooting, off eyepiece, so this isn't an eyepiece. I see this eyeball, and I look at him, and all of a sudden I see him start laughing, and I see him like the front of the lens like bouncing up and down, like, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, the shake left will kill you.
Yeah, it doesn't work well for a camera operator.
Worse for the camera guys, yeah. With the DPA, maybe a little better because the off-axis is so linear, right?
Yeah. I would either look at my gear and kind of, rotate away, but we found that if you didn't look at each other, that really helped, because otherwise it was horrible. And sometimes Sasha broke, maybe twice, Gonna happen.
No, totally. It sounds crazy. I wish I could hang with you one day while you're on set with something like that. It sounds so cool. There's something that interests me always on film sets is the syncing of everything. Can you run through how you're handling sync? Are you guys the master? Are you the slave to the cameras? How is it all working on set to ensure that the dailies and sort of when you finally get into post-production, how that is all accurate and right on?
Well, so we use SMPTE time code. Generally, almost always 23976. But what we are the master. Sound is the master clock. So I set it from the Kantar, which is my master recorder. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. My flavor of doing it is to then jam various boxes. There's time code boxes that we jam that jam the camera, as well as slates and any other devices that they need. Sometimes the script supervisor wants to have time code. You know, there's a few different ways that happens. Are you hearing me? Because I'm not hearing anything all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm hearing you just fine.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I muted my mic for a second because I'm getting a spam caller on my house phone.
Okay. All right. No, I just had I was wondering, maybe it was dead both directions.
No,
what
you're
I'm
good.
doing now, though, is basically what I've devised is a rack now that goes on set. The idea being I have all the receivers closer to where we're working, so now we don't have to run antennas. So I put, well, just because I've had them forever, these electrosonics venues, and then I'm outputting them into to a box, a Ferrofish box that converts them to Dante and sends them down a Dante line to the mixer. And then from the mixer, I'm sending returns back. I'm sending a time code feedback, as well as a feed for wireless stuff for my crew to listen to with our IFBs. That puts it closer to set, and whatever, I can feed speakers out of there, or voice of God stuff, or
So you're doing that.
earwigs.
You're doing that all down one piece of Cat 7 or multiple Dante runs.
Yeah, it's just Cat 6. It's
Okay.
and it's got the EtherCon stuff.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, you know, the like kind
All right, you just cut out. Scott, if you can hear me, your mic just cut out. Oh, now it's back. Okay. I can't hear. Can anyone hear Scott, John?
No, we
Okay.
lost.
Lost them.
We lost your voice.
it's gonna come back in a second.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, you know what I just did there? I just
Tell me.
unplugged the receiver from my wireless that then went to the mixer and did this whole loop. So, yeah,
Great.
brain surgeon. That's a
That's-
smart guy trick.
Yeah, we need to get you back to work, man, really quick. That's amazing.
That's
Hey,
classic.
before we take a question, I wanted to ask you, what do you do to ensure the comfort and the lack of sort of like getting involved with the actors and actresses? Like, do you like over mic the set? Do you sort of like, are you booming? Are you body worn? I mean, because there's going to be some stuff that happens that could be amazing that wasn't in the script, right? That happens occasionally. So how do you plan for unexpected, unforeseen events?
Well, a lot of times what I do at the beginning of any project is I'll talk to the director, and because, you know, we all get the scripts, but there's subtext and there's things that aren't in it, you know, that aren't written in the script. And so I always ask them, hey, is there stuff there that's important that isn't written down, you know, because that's what I have to go on. I tend to default to, you know, the name of the game in general the past few years, because technology's kept up with it and it's viable and doable, is to more or less wire everybody. I mean, obviously we booms sound more natural. They cut together better than different mics. You know, I'm wearing a leather jacket, you're wearing a t-shirt. It's gonna sound different. They're gonna have to massage the hell out of that in post. If we can get a boom in, it's gonna work way better. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes they're shooting a wide lens and a tight lens at the same time, and
I guess there's times where someone's grabbing their microphone, and then you've got the boom to go back to. Matching those microphones is probably clutch. And I guess like if you're using an Omni Lav, you're picking up a little bit of the surrounding sound as well, which is cool. A little less high end in the back, but the boom, if it's a good boom and it's sort of linear on the sides, you could almost if you're respecting proximity settings, you could probably almost go from one to the other in post and probably be able to repair some great scenes, right?
Well, lavs are tighter pickup. Lavs are a smaller sphere of area. I don't have to turn them up as loud generally than I would a boom. And there's a zillion factors here. There's actors that whisper or crazy dynamic, you know, and sometimes you use both. You use the wire for a couple of words that they throw down because you're booming from above, or you know, whatever. There's a lot of reasons, so we just more or less preemptively wire everybody, because also outside of a singular scene's aesthetic, like you don't know what the sound is from the scene prior, and I can't presume to know. And they may be in something in a car that, you know, the windows were down, or you know, who knows? And all of a sudden you're on a wire there, and sometimes it helps post to feather from a wire to a wire in the next scene. Yeah. Versus to go from, you know, a wire to a really wide sounding mic, or, you know, there's no way for me to know. If they're generally, they'll start, you know, every scene starts with a big master shot. It's really wide. So you can almost bet on the beginning of the scene being used with your boom in a wider area setup. But we're tracking everything. Doesn't cost any more. It's all part of the game right now, and we have the, you know, the power. You know, we have the people to put it together. And the other thing is, if all of a sudden, in the middle of a setup, they decide to shoot with a really wide lens, we don't have to pull the actor out and say, "Hey, let's wire you now." Yeah, exactly. Just wire them. They go in there, and in theory, if your lead crew of actors kind of go along with it, it sets the tone for everybody else. And hopefully your post editors just calling you up to say, "Hey, we want you to do another movie," and not saying, "I can't use this." Hey, we got a lot of questions, so we're going to come back where we just left off and talk about some other things that I have on my list. But let's go to a question. I'll have John Root come in and take over for a second.
Hey, thank you, Gabriel. Scott, thank you. We got lots of questions coming in, so I'm going to try to grab these as they've been flying in. So the first one that came in was actually from you, somebody that's representing you. And it was, when did you start using the 4071, Scott? And what was the reason for changing from the Cause 11?
You know, the Cause 11s we still use. I tend to use them if we have to get stuff up further towards the neck. They seem to have kind of a higher top end, I'll say. They both have their uses, and the 71s just, they sound better. I think they match better. There's times where I go back and forth, and I mean, obviously I know what I'm doing, but they are pretty dang seamless. And now, you know, I've been going with jumped over to the 4017.
4017,
the shotgun, and I've really fallen in love with that. I mean, definitely we use a lot of different mics, but they all have their uses. But I love the 40, you know, the 4070 ones. It's got a little bit more. I don't know why I saw a thing there about using that versus a 40, what is it? The 4061. 61? It's just kind of how I ended up. That was the first one I got. And I know they have the same element. It's just a different cap. And I've had caps with 61 caps on there, right? I mean, isn't that more or less
a 61 cap will have a soft high frequency boost, whereas the 4071 has a high frequency boost at 5 dB between 4 and 6. So if you're going to bury that microphone or you're putting it out to do vocals, it's going to sound a little more airy, and it's going to acoustically equalize the space around the capsule to give you more high end. So whether you're burying it, and it's got 144 dB SPL with 137 dB harmonic distortion level, which means basically you could be in front of an airplane engine and the microphone's not distorting yet.
Right.
So it's really, really a workhorse. And with the IP58, with the immersive qualities and the dust proofing and all that. It's just a workhorse. You never see it, but you hear a great sound. And pairing that with the 4017, which is also RFI immune, humidity immune, very light, different form factors. It's just a great. I mean, the problem with most directional shotguns, obviously, are that they're trying to get the reflective signals, wavelengths coming in from the side of the mic because it's constantly moving, and it's hard to keep that from being unwanted sound. The DPA really stays true, linear at all angles as you're moving. So it's just a very good match to the body worn. Yeah, you can tell I love it. I love that microphone. It's fantastic.
I'm a huge fan of the 4017. I like the way off-axis doesn't get real colored and go tinny the way previous incarnations of whatever, like a 416 will, or things like that, which are great in terms of directionality. But you get off-axis and things can sound odd.
And we're also printing our proximity settings at the factory for our directional microphones. For instance, for the 4017. Which has the 2 filters in it for high and low pass filtering, we're printing that at 26 inches, roundabout thereof, it's proximity flat in a controlled environment. So you could count on that. The sort of I want more low end, let me come in a little bit. I want less, let me go out a little bit. And just the linearity off axis with the omnis together is just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, we goosed up the high ends when we're really wide. And that helps kind of pull a little bit more out, almost give it what to me feels like more reach.
Yeah.
And I think they're amazing mics, and I can see a lot of people kind of jumping to them. Like, I mean, the thing I'm heading to, we're still going to wire people, but initially people with coming out of COVID were thinking like, hey, let's not wire everybody all the time. And we'll see how that plays out as it happens.
Did you know we can make that 4017 wireless?
In what wireless to? Because I work with wireless booms, so I'm trying to.
How do you set up the 17 wirelessly?
Basically, we go to either. I have 2 systems. One's what they call a butt plug, Electrosonics. Whatever it is, a UM or not a UM, or we go to a phantom pack that goes to a transmitter. That's like a hip worn rig.
So something you should know too is we have an active cable system that terminates to the microdot that can go on that microphone. I think it's called an MMPG, and it could terminate into whatever transmitter pack you're using. So you can actually use it in different form factors, even into your iPhone if you wanted to at 2496 with the MMA interface. Yeah, so just to know that in the back of your head, because I know you've done lots of situations where, I wish I could use this here. We've got tons of different accessories for that. Let's go to another question, John.
Okay. All right,
Hopefully
let's see.
we answered
Lots
that.
of questions. Yeah, well, lots of questions. This is great. Let's go to one of the questions that came in from Carl from in Sweden. He basically says, Carl's asking the question, in Sweden, we almost always use the field recording in movies and TV series for dialogue. How is it in the States? I've heard in big Hollywood movies, you only use the field recording for the actors to sync their dialogue when recording later in a studio. True or false?
Good question.
I can say false to that. It depends upon what you're working on, The stuff I'm doing tends to not be the stuff with giant, E-fans and everything kind of sitting right next to set. There's times where, or whatever, the location is right next to a train crossing or something. Those are things you can't really resolve. But in general, I mean, I do a show, Bosch, that is what we're going to start soon. And it's very much LA as a character in the show. And we are in places that are really what I would consider borderline sound hostile. And, we boom it. You get the sound, you get more of the sound of the area, and sometimes that's useful. Sometimes it's just too much It's way too useful. And so we lob, and the lob gives you a tighter pickup area. We do what we can. I mean, I'm not a re-recording mixer. I do engage with dialogue editors and re-recording mixers, and that's usually definitely after the fact. But I always like to hear from them as to like what worked and what didn't. And they can use it. And then there's, I mean, in the last 5 years, what plugins can do is just ridiculous. Now, I don't want to, obviously, I don't want to presume to land, you know, this turd in somebody's lap. Like, hey, man, just fix this. Obviously, I'd have to fix it. We have to do what we can where we are and to try to resolve it. But there are limits. You know, there's time, budget, you know, whatever. We got to be in the next location in 2 hours. We got to finish here. We can't wait for, you know, everything to stop every time there's a truck. Whatever. There's always a context. Which, you know, our post friends don't know the context, and you know, it can be. I'm not going to say it's not adversarial. I could see people sometimes getting stuff that we've recorded to scratch in their head, like, what were they doing out there? You know,
where did that toilet flush come in? You know what? I just think Sweden is a much quieter place than America. No, and I agree with you. It's a variable answer, and I think if you could keep costs down and you're using your field recordings and they're clean, you're saving a lot of money, right? And if you're getting a clean, beautiful mic and a great voice and everything's perfect, great. Sometimes we have to work with happy accidents, I call them, where something happens that was unexpected, but it still kind of works. But for the most part, I still think it's, what would you say, 70-30? Field versus ADR replacement?
Oh, I'd say it's more than that. I mean, knowing the shows, well, I know a couple of actors personally, and, you know, they'll come up months after and say, hey, we didn't have to ADR anything, you know, or very little. Or, you know, there is ADR, you know, and there's a lot of reasons. Generally, they'll say, hey, it was just because there was line changes or something. They cut the scene and then they realized that whatever, they had to throw in another line. But that said, it's all contextual. I mean, you're shooting out on a ship and there's, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen. By far and away, though, they're using what we record. That's beautiful. I mean, they massage it, though. They clean it up. It's not like, hey, here, just use it. Broadcast.
Well, the re-recording mixer is not actually recording anything, right? He's just getting all the sources and mixing the final product, right?
Yeah, so we hand it over to, you know, the sequence is more or less, we hand it over to a picture editor. They make a cut to tell the story, and then it goes back to the sound department to then clean up those particular takes or whatever.
Right.
And then that element, as well as music, effects, various other things, all land in the lap of the re-recording mixer, who then remixes it for different formats and to make it sound good.
Yeah, it's cool.
You know,
that's great. I think you more than answered that question. Let's go to another 2 questions, John.
Okay, let's go to All right, so Mark has asked a question. He says, I believe he's referring to timecode with TC. Timecode sufficient to create media. Is timecode sufficient to create media of the same length? Question mark. I have found Genlock video sync to be more important. Mean anything?
Actually, we're not doing. There was a point in time where we first started using like ambient boxes and things like that, lock it boxes, where we were doing both Genlock and video, but boy, in the last 10 years, I don't think I've done that at all. Unless they're going to kind of be doing live switching, I've never seen the need for them to have Genlock in it. I don't know what changed that. I'm more of an end user, and you know, post-production person could probably tell you what changed. Maybe it's the clock within the cameras now. Once you jam it with timecode, they may stay in sync, because there used to be an issue with timecode and Genlock not drifting in relation to each other. I think now they've got it down so if you jam timecode, it stays, the Genlock stays with it.
And I think
I think.
possibly
I don't know.
as we went to less transport-based machines, as we phased out, the big video recorders and the cameras having actual wheels turning inside of them, the time code got much better. Because remember before, when I worked in broadcasting, we were doing VITSI, we were doing LTC, we were doing Blackburst, we were doing everything.
Yeah.
So I think now these things are a little smarter, but you do need at least one form of sync to get them all in the ballpark. Good question
Yeah.
there. Got another one, John?
Yeah, we do actually. This one's from Patrick, and this is probably apropos going into the holiday season. Say you're miking up Santa Claus.
Oh shit.
Would you put the lav in the beard or in the Santa hat?
Interesting. Well, I guess the
Wow.
first question would be: is Santa going to take his hat off? And if he's not, then we have a viable option, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would go in the hat, but I mean, it depends upon the beard, right? I mean, everything's kind of, you got to read it. You got to read the room. And also, like, is there a kid on his lap or whatever? That'll be another element of it.
Yeah.
There's obviously the movement of the beard. Beards are horrible, especially you get a tie. You get a tie with a beard and somebody looks down. We
Get a
have
hair
this
right inside the capsule. Right.
Yeah, no, and it's just
Yeah.
that's brutal. We have on the show Bosch, we have our chief Lance is the chief of police is bald, so we can't go into a hair zone, and he speaks quite lowly. He's got a wonderful voice, but it's down there, and we got to work hard to dig him out. And he's also like one of those people who rubs his chin on his tie. So he's always in a tie because he's just chief of police. And you find, there's a lot of different things like that. A lot of actors in the last 10 odd years have felt, I think, the mode often now is to talk lower and to try to draw people in. If I talk lower, you're going to be listening to me more. Whatever. It's a choice. It's an acting choice, and it's popular, and it's
That was creepy. I liked it.
Yeah, I got my creep on. But that's, we have to deal with that, and that's also another reason why we tend to just preemptively wire everybody, because sometimes they just get down in the dirt. And
I'm not wiring Santa Claus unless he gives me my Batman toy from when I was 5 years old that I never got. My spin on Santa would be like, hey, we have these little caps now for our mics that you can actually change the color of. So maybe if he's got a big beard, maybe we could plant some headset in there, like a white headset, right kind of here with the capsule, back in his beard, or do the old sort of like Broadway trick right here.
Totally. You could go in the beard. It depends upon the beard, and your time. The time element, there's a little bit of politics working with hair department, and if you have a white mic and all those beats.
Yeah.
And that's, those kinds of things, you could perceive that as a hassle, but it's also like a challenge. And it's, to me, you can kind of see that as a nasty ass hurdle, or you could say like, wow, man, okay, what tools I got here? Okay, and I love that. I love puzzles, and it's just another puzzle.
And I like that question too, because I'm going to start using that, because you could use like famous people in history to say, hey, we've got this guy on the set, we've got Attila the Hun. How are we going to mic him? I like it. That's a whole nice way of going about it.
The Attila mic.
Right. We've got Jesus, Buddha, and the devil on this set. What are we doing, folks? All right.
Like a lead in for a joke.
Right. Next question.
All right. We've got a question here. I think this is really a nice question. This is from Kevin. He states that I'm a new mixer, still in school, having only ever mixed student films. Would like to know any advice for someone just getting into the industry, Scott.
Well, I try to get my friends that are my utilities and various people that work in, we're doing more narrative stuff, to work in reality. It may not be where you want to go, but I think there's amazing lessons there in having, like, you got to carry your tools. And you more or less have to have you have to have your recorder, your wires, your boom, and you can't carry it all with you. And you have to make those decisions as to what you have. You can't carry it all with you, but you have to carry enough to pull off the job. And then something comes up where you don't have what you need, and you end up with that, okay, now what moment. Those are really great. Those are really important learning possibilities. And it teaches you, number one, technical things, but also like how to not panic, how to figure out how to get something done, how to decide what's more important, because there's always trade-offs. Like, okay, we can do this, but if I do that, then I don't have enough wires for this other thing, whatever it is. That forces people into positions. I love documentaries, and that's where I came from, and so I'm partial to that. I love doing true documentaries. I was doing that and then that evolved into some reality stuff forever ago.
I agree with that statement. Yep.
And I like that. And it's also a place where the crews are smaller, and you learn how to light, and you learn what the implications of lighting certain ways are, and you help other people in the crew. I've done makeup on people, for interviews, and it's good to wear a big broad hat and have a lot of skill sets.
Or it's kind of good to really know a little bit about everyone else's job, because it makes you a little bit more better at yours.
Well, you know what to ask them, what is their job and what is your job, and it gives you empathy towards like what their plight is, because
what they're going through. That's right.
Everybody's job, when you're not doing the job, everybody just kind of looks at me and goes like, oh yeah, your job's easy. You just kind of stand there all day, or whatever. I can look at a costumer and say, well, what do you do, man? You just go get a couple of pieces of clothing and that's easy. Yeah, it's easy when you're number one, good at it because you're calm, and number two, you know what you're doing.
I came out of PBS boot camp. I worked there for 10 years at PBS, so documentaries was like every week we were doing, and I'll never forget one time where we were doing a children's show with Jonathan Winters. If you remember him, it's a crazy guy.
Yeah.
And like the puppet was really getting on everyone's nerves, and then finally they took his costume off, and he's been inside this god-awful hot box for 8 hours with fans inside of it, and it really gave me a new perspective on what he was going through. I was like, all right, I'll stay in the audio room. It's great. I got my bagel. I got my console. We're good. So
right.
Yeah. Crazy,
I love working on TV and film sets because for a lot of reasons, but I find the personalities, you get people that are really good at what they do, and it's varied. There's people there that can fabricate some ridiculous piece of metal, and there's people there that can make aesthetic decisions that one would never think you would, and there's people there that are writers, and everybody's really very accomplished and very driven and interesting to talk to. I mean, if you let it play out, I mean, like everything, there's jerks, but by far and away, I love, and I find myself, repeatedly being thankful for who I get to work around.
That's a great
Except for my guys. My guys are jerks, but like everybody else, all the other crews are cool.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's for my boys there.
No, that's great. Well, your boy. Thanks for your boys joining in too. It's great. No, that's really cool that you said that, because I do think at the end of the day, that's why you see rock stars traveling with posses, because they get comfortable with people. It's not necessarily that they're the best, but knowing that when you're with people that are really good at what they do, like for me, TV was always a 3, 2, 1, you're live, and film is more or less like we're making something here, and it has different parts, and each day we need to capture something, and then it goes to the next phase. So even in music, I still take that sort of like, if I'm in a recording studio, I try to have a live attitude, and if I'm in a live, I try to have more of a studio. Let's get the best quality we can. They all work together, don't they? It's all about capturing the sound. How do you deal with, how do you use, should I say, processing like EQ and compression? Do you make decisions in the field with compression and equalization and commit.
Very
and
little.
Sort of talk about that.
Yeah, I basically do a low cut, do a radical, whatever, minus, I think 15 or so at about 80 hertz, maybe 75 hertz, just to take some low end out because nobody's really down there, honestly. And I keep it really clean. I'll find stuff, I'll do like a parametric EQ and find like some frequency where, the ballast for an HMI is just singing at times or whatever. There's a certain noise and I'll find it, but I won't take it away. I'll just point it out and I'll note it.
Oh,
because my EQ, the EQ that I have here is fine, but it is nowhere near what is, what they have on the back end where I turn things in. I mean, granted, my context is I know there's people behind me in the process. The
That's
context
really smart,
for
man.
somebody else may not have that, and you've got to EQ it, and that's fine. But where I sit, I more or less am just taking down the low end, giving them really clean, flat, there's almost zero EQ. But I will note, I'll say like, hey, yeah, there's a ring out at, 3.5K, and just put that in the notes and they can approximate it so they can quickly get there and then they can do a much better job.
That's a fantastic answer. That's great. I think that we have a question that I'm seeing text go back and forth for. So does anyone, John, do we have something?
We got a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And in fact, if we don't get to all the questions today during this live Zoom webinar, we're going to do our best to get Scott and Gabriel to reply to them to you.
Yep.
So as we're capturing them, so please be patient with us. But yeah, we've got a question here that states, let's pull one up here.
We'll try to be briefer too, so we can get through more.
Yep, that'd be great. So, Scott, this comes in and says, have you ever used all or nearly all of your 18 channels of Venue?
I have, yeah, not a lot, but definitely I have. And, sometimes it's the way the stuff is packaged. Well, I mean, put it this way. I have them here. Basically tend to be around, use maybe 10 of them. I like to keep a couple aside for voice of God purposes, which I think coming up in this COVID world, we're going to try to, I'm pretty sure we'll start seeing that more so that assistant directors and directors don't have to get on set. They're trying to keep the numbers down on set. So in theory, if somebody's watching from a monitor, far side of the stage or wherever they are, they can telegraph that there with the voice of God quicker than strolling over and raising those numbers constantly.
I'm sure everybody knows what that means, but VOD, voice of God, is sort of the director, right? In everyone's speaker. There you go, voice of God.
Yeah, so basically it's just a little hand mic, there's different versions of this. I like these, they're switchable. It's a wireless hand mic and they get ruined. So I use kind of crappy old transmitters.
Do you have some new cleaning procedures that you're sort of having to implement?
Yeah, well, number one, these will be allocated to the person and be theirs.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's alcohol versions of it. There's also Ziplocs. So basically, that will come in at night. Say that's our first ADs, assistant directors, right? And that will be the ADs for that episode or however long that AD works. Instead of trying to really get it down to uber clean every single day, we'll that's how we're starting with it, and a lot of times they don't, we have to build for this. They may not use it, but we got to be ready to and not have to design it and pull it off the truck and everything. It's got to be kind of ready to go in 2 minutes.
I wanted to mention something really quickly before we start getting more questions. I think what we'll do for the rest of this event is maybe just go question after question, since we have so many, maybe for the next 20 or 25 minutes. as many as we could. But I want to tell everyone that we've got a special announcement coming up October 1st that pertains to filmmaking. And since you've all signed up for the webinar, you'll receive that news in your inbox. So stay tuned for that exciting news coming up for you film weenies. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to questions, and then we're going to answer briefly. I'll try not to comment too much because I know sometimes I can't help it. But John, take it away, buddy.
All right, thanks, Gabriel. Thanks, Scott. So we have a question here from Linda. She says, what do you think about visible mics on a non-fiction productions?
Visible mics on non-fiction.
I mean, you know, I like to hide mics or put them just out of frame. So like, you know, I'm here and, you know, it depends upon the context. As long as it doesn't detract from what you're doing, I prefer to rig them so that you don't see them, obviously, because then you have a choice. Once you see them, you can't unsee them, or you're going to spend some money on visual effects. So I tend to rig so that you don't see them. Like I do documentaries with whatever. I'll do maybe a couple weeks with Ken Burns and that kind of stuff every year. And basically, you know, I'll see the frame. And you know, the frame isn't going to change a hell of a lot. So I just put the lav just out of frame, and I put a boom, you know, and I can sit there and I can, you know, do it with my eye, or I can actually look at the frame and just say, okay, oh, that's out. And there we go, right there. I mean,
yeah,
it's, you know, as long as you don't have like a giant wide shot, but those are aesthetic choices. And that's actually something I defer to the director about.
To me,
and there's things that yeah.
To me, there's nothing like hearing great sound and not seeing anything. Yeah. It's just sort of like, and that's sort of DPA's philosophy too on microphones, is we want it to sound like there's no microphone at all. It's just like you're there. It's that there feeling that's most important. And when you see a mic, I agree with you, you start to sort of fixate on it. Well, that's good.
Oh, it's a sound person for sure, right? I mean, because that's what I do. Is the other thing is trying to be like, okay, what would my wife think of this? I mean,
let's bring your wife in. No,
hey, buddy.
So here's another question for you from Kenneth. Assuming that you've worked with a DPA 4018 supercardioid, his question is, how do you feel about using the DPA 4018 supercardioid indoors as it compares to other indoor dialogue boom mics and the DPA 4017 shotgun mic?
Okay, well, I mean, in that realm of whatever, supercardioids, or I don't know, where hypercardioids, but basically, I come from using MKH50 and have used those a lot through history, and they sound wonderful. And the 4018 is kind of DPA's flavor of that. It's different, but it is kind of serves that realm for me. But I found actually we have rarely used them, where we tend to stick with the 4017s more. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that the off-axis coloration isn't as radical as you would think. Usually there's that trade-off of like, okay, I'm going to get more pull or more directionality out of it. And with that comes a big coloration of the off-axis stuff. And if you take away that off-axis, or you take away that coloration, it's actually not so bad. So maybe you're not spot on with the person, but it doesn't sound goofy. If you're, if you're trying to pan between people, or, whatever is off axis, tends to play a little better. So we've tended to use the 4017 both in and outdoors, whereas other boom or short shotgun mics, we tend to do a lot more flip-flopping. So I would previously have used, say, like a CMIT and the 50, or if I wanted more pull, I would go with like a Sanken CS3 and the 50, or, it just depends. Yeah. But I found the 4017 has been an amazing tool and super versatile, and it's not giving up a lot. So I'm crazy happy.
And a quick comment on that would be that, sorry, John, is okay. The 4018 versus the 4017, you have two different proximity settings. One's at 12 inches, one's at 26. So further reach on the 4017, so close quarters indoors, The 18, I've boomed from below and above, and they both sound wonderful. The other thing that I like about the 18 is that the rear lobe is smaller, so if you have a noisy vent coming out of a ceiling, it's going to be more forgiving for that. It's going to be quieter, and it's the same microphone that a famous band just used on snare drum for the whole record. So there's that.
Love it.
All right. I'm happy to hear this a lot about the 4017 because I remember when you and I met up and I actually gave you one to use. Was that Ballers? Where was that? What were we doing?
I think, yeah, we were at Paramount. I think it was
Yeah.
Ballers. Yeah.
It was Ballers. Yeah. Okay. So here's a question actually from two different people. I'm going to combine the questions. One's from Dan Grib and the other one is from Tom. Tom's question is, well, I'll go to Dan. Dan says, for your notes, are you using paper logs or are you using digital notes on a laptop? And to add to that, Tom is asking, what is your audio file storage process on set? Do you run into a DAW or an HD store to store files?
Great questions.
Okay. So for while we're recording, and that's something that's in the last while. I mean, I've been doing it, I think, probably about as long as anybody in terms of making basically digital sound logs. Basically, you're embedding what I do, and what a lot of the stuff is designed around now is to embed your notes and your and whatnot within the metadata. You can name your tracks, you know, all those things, tracks, take numbers, you know, scene take numbers, notes, things like that. I like that because it's actually there within the actual audio file, so that I can't turn in a report unless it's in the file. Like there's methods where people make notes and take notes, but it's not actually part of the file, and you can really screw things up and misname things and do whatnot. What I do is I record stuff on, so on the Kantar and a lot of the recorders now we're using SD cards. And so we're recording on the SD cards. And what I do at the end of it is I generate a report. The recorder will do it, and I also use a piece of software called Wave Agent, which I love, is made by Sound Devices. And what it does is it looks at the file, and it will take every single file, and it will take every single track on all the files and generate a report, a PDF. I like to do both. I like to do a PDF because you can't change it as readily, and then also a CSV, which is whatever, like an Excel tab delineated file. And so those are more malleable than the PDFs. What I then do is I take those go on the same card with the audio files. I hand that over to basically a DIT or whatever kind of info person. They lay it off to their hard drives, they shuttle drives. It's also at the same time being recorded onto my deck. It's there as a backup. And then I have another backup beyond that. Then what I do is, because I hate getting phone calls from post-production people who have questions about stuff and they don't look at the reports. And so what I do is I have developed a system that's pretty simple, and everybody can do it, is I take the sound report and I uplink it to a folder that I have for my show. So for this coming thing, I'll have a Bosch folder, and then I'll have a sound reports folder within that folder. I share that folder. I share that folder with all the assistant editors, whoever, any of the post supervisors, any of the people at Encore, or whoever's, you know, dealing with the trafficking of the files or syncing it up or whatever. I basically say, hey, everybody, please don't ask me a question unless you go and look at that report. And that has basically alleviated 95% of the really not goofball. I mean, people have questions, but now they go there. Now they go there instead of asking me.
They're probably originally like, this guy's such a jerk. Makes us go
Yeah.
to the folder.
Sometimes you got to be a jerk.
You used one of my favorite words, malleable, which I applaud you for. That's one of my favorite words. Totally. That's crazy. Well, real quick before we go to another question, what do you do for reference, like room tone? Do you guys do you have a separate mic up that's always that you could sample the room? So if you need to sort of for I guess for the post editor to use for a Band-Aid.
Yeah. What we tend to have, just because of production schedules, less time to do room tone, and it's a little bit more political to try to grab everybody to look at their belly button for 20 seconds. So what is actually, I'll try to listen for it and listen, like a lot of times between they call action and between when acting starts, there can be like a 3 to 5 second gap within there. And over multiple takes, it usually suffices. Two things that I do is to try to either note if there's a gap of air. Number two, also say there's like something you can't control, a refrigerator compressor kicks on and off and on and off. When it's on, we'll record room tone. And then when it's off, I'll try to get that flavor of room tone.
And that goes into your notes, right? As well as like, I mean, give me a quick example,
and then,
a brief example of what you would put into a note. Like,
yeah, exactly. In the notes of it, in the take where there is a space where there's some usable room tone, I'll write RT and I'll write the time code. Nice. So that's kind of my way of, here's room tone, here's the roughly where you're going to find it. That's how the way I'm dealing with it. I don't call room tone 80% of the time, unless there's really an issue, truly, anymore.
Well, we've got about 10 or 15 minutes left. Do my little shaker, 10 or 15 minute shaker. And we're going to do, I don't know, probably the way we're talking is probably going to be like hopefully 5 questions. We'll do like a minute or 2 apiece. We'll get in as many as I can. I want to say thank you to everyone who joined, before we hit the end of the show. Thanks to Scott. You're awesome. You're a walking audio knowledge book, and you're a fun dude. And everybody here, please, if your questions don't get answered, we're going to go back on later today or tomorrow and answer all of the questions. And again, stay tuned for that October 1st email about the filmmaking thing. So let's rifle through about 5 questions. And go ahead, John, take over, buddy.
Okay, and just to cap on, because a couple of people did have to drop off, we are recording this. We do intend to post it and put it back out, a link to everybody. And we also intend to get Gabriel and Scott at some point in time to be able to go through the questions we weren't able to ask and to get those answers back out to you. So thank you very much again for joining us this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're calling in from. So here's a question from an anonymous attendee. Maybe this person's a boom operator, but the question is, how do you deal with a boom op that consistently dips into the frame?
Oh, well, yeah.
Wow.
I think I think probably you would then call the director and say, do you have another boom operator? No. That's a tough one. I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Scott.
I don't work with people I don't know, Yeah. I have that problem with Ben Greaves a lot because he's texting me about this question.
What does he say? What does he say?
He just said boom. No, that's we have monitors, right? So like on my cart, I'm looking at what they're shooting. And there's been times where there's politics involved, where say like, a camera operator missed something and they'll kind of drift up and then the boom's in the shot and then they'll say, oh, the boom's in, we need another take.
Your fault, yeah.
That has happened. It's fine. I don't mind being that, thing that gets run over by the bus. But a boom operator that does that a lot is,
Just tell them to wear high heels.
It's done.
There's also a lot of times they can frame it up, right? So we rehearse with a frame, and then all of a sudden we do the actual take, and the guy like drifts up like
Well,
to.
here's the bottom
You
line.
can't
The
protect
bottom
for
line,
that.
if somebody, let's pretend that guy was a pilot, okay? Or this is when you get serious about your craft. If that guy keeps dropping the boom in, he's obviously not paying attention. He doesn't have the sort of physical and mental strength to stay there and watch what's going on, because if he keeps repeatedly doing it, he's got to give him another job. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I'm talking, we've got a PL system, so I can tell them like, hey, you're in, at this point in time. And so the other thing is not every shot, not every shot we shoot needs to be used from, beginning to end.
Right.
So we can say like, hey, the boom was in at this point. I can tell the director has a clearer idea of what the cut is and see like, okay, we're not going to be on camera B, which is the one he dipped in at this point in time. So it's fine, and so I give it to them. I don't say, hey, we need another one because the boom dipped in, because I can't presume to know what
I think you give the guy
they
two
want to use,
chances. Yeah, if you hired him, you give the guy a couple chances, if or girl, and if they do not get it together, then it reflects back on the person who hired them. I do think it's political. I do think it's professional. You have to give every person a chance, but you eventually need to move on, or the person gets better, hopefully.
Well, you're working as a team.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the sound team, and then there's the team in a larger sense, like the boom op needs to work with the camera operator.
Your mic went away. The boom guy did it.
So while Scott fixes his audio,
It did.
Yeah.
Is
There
it
you
on
go.
now?
back. Yeah, you're back.
Huh.
Yeah.
Curious.
You had a drop.
So,
Yeah, we'll go to the next question.
yeah.
All right, we'll go to another question here. So this is actually a number of questions. I'm going to fire them off. This is from Lisa. Question,
yes.
okay, the first question, no, yes, right. The first question is, please describe your method of hiding mics in reality shows. Where do you place them? How do you attach them? How do you avoid clothing noise? I guess I'll read all the questions. That's the first part of her question.
Okay. Well, like let's see. So if you start with a bare mic, right? So this is like a 60-61 here, right? On reality and docs and things like that, I'm not mounting like this. I need a concealer, or I need something that basically attaches with it.
Here's a concealer clip.
Yeah. So basically we've got concealers of different flavors. So like that's a mic. This is a 71 inside a concealer, right? So basically, we've got, sticky stuff on the back of, super stick or whatever we're using. That is kind of our go-to. That's what I would walk up to somebody with. And it depends upon what they're wearing, On a reality show, it depends upon, okay, am I wiring up 6 people? What do I start with for the 6? Or is there, do I know that these 3 are wearing, button-down shirts and these other 3 are wearing T-shirts? You kind of have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And
so you try to pre-rig stuff that will suit and fit what you're heading into.
And hey, Scott, are you using the 4671 or using the heavy duty Kevlar reinforced cable?
No.
Okay.
We don't, in that it's the cable is slightly beefier, and we end up having to hide, to try to get that to not register under a white T-shirt or whatever you're going under. You don't want it to register through there. I've got a couple of them, but in general, we're just the regular ones.
Yeah, they're real good for strength. I'll tell you what, we've got so many great questions. I could do this for all day, but I think I'm being signaled to start landing this plane. What we're going to do is we're going to take 2 more questions, and we're going to end this, and we're going to say goodbye right at the end of that. So, John, whoever's asking questions, there's 2 more questions, and then we'll say our goodbyes.
You got it. So let's see here. We got a lot of good questions. Here's a question that was earlier that came in from Phil. Do you have any thoughts on 32-bit floating point and how it might affect the craft?
Neat.
This is a John Tatulis question here.
Totally.
I don't deal with the back end of this, but in terms of gain structure and kind of covering yourself for, you know, big dynamic swings,
Headroom, baby, headroom.
it could be really great. On the show Bosch that we do a lot of, basically we set up rigs in a car and we set the car off and we're not in it, you know. You hope for the best and you do a lot of things, but having a 32-bit, you know, recording can help in terms of not being right, but still having it be useful. Granted, they'll have to remix it, but it's remixable as opposed to something that's either kind of, you know, you're mixing super conservative and it's down in the dirt. And you know, with 32-bit, it's, I think, but again, I'm not dealing with the back end of it. So
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
more of a post question, truly.
Yeah, the
All right,
32
well,
bit is
let's
very
go to the last two. I'm going to combine them both actually because I think
Okay.
this would be really. And then if you've got something, Gabe, by all means ask. But Kenneth asked, "What do you look for in a new first-time sound utility?" So I'd like you to answer that one if you've got an answer to that one. And I've got one more question for you, Scott. After that.
Okay. Well, the people that I've had a couple of trainees, basically set PAs who've kind of come through me, and we kind of folded them into whatever, a career, or a potentially better career than an AD, which is where they were headed. I would prefer a good attitude than technical, you know-how. I mean, truly, I think somebody who's open to stuff and spongy and absorbing is way better long game stuff than somebody who rolls in. I mean, it's good to have some basic ideas, but that's what I would say is by far and away a good attitude.
Great. And so to camp onto that, and this will be the last question that we'll be taking, you know, lots of us have been in this industry for a long time. There may be many of the attendees here that have been in the industry for a long time, and there's probably some folks here based on some of the questions that are new to the industry or stepping into it. So internship, you talked about a little bit. As the industry moves forward, and we hopefully it does get moving forward quicker sooner, what advice would you give people, younger people that are wanting to come into this industry, where they can look for support, internships, mentoring? Maybe you have a process around that you'd like to share with everybody, and we'll let it go from there.
I've gotten pulled into. Obviously, I get trainees and pull them into our system and have them get days so they can work in the union, etc. That's one little more advanced version of that story. But I love doing internships. Internships right now are horrible because the numbers trying to keep the numbers of people down on set. So it's just a bad time for that. I'm sorry to say. Because everybody's going to have to be tested, and they're really trying to keep these small bubbles separate so that they can figure out, you know, who tests positive or whatever. I would glom on to find people in your area, find somebody who's open to it, find somebody who doesn't mind imparting some help. Because I mean, I'm still learning. Everybody's still learning. We're all progressing, and that it doesn't ever end. Yeah. You know, there's online places. There's great, amazing websites that, you know, I go to the Jeff Wexler site and various other things. I've gone to, you know, various spots. I've gone to Gotham Sound and learned stuff to, you know, through Peter Snyder and Mike Paul and all these. There's these fonts of information out there that will help you, number one, see how to be and see how to solve things. And then you can ask them questions, because a lot of times that question has already been asked if you just search for it.
And that's a great answer. And to round it up, a few comments for myself on that subject is, I think you should pick up the phone and let someone hear your voice. Texting and emailing is great to start out with, but sound is an intimate thing. When you talk, you're touching someone. You're going into their ear. They're getting to know you much quicker. And also, offer some offsite assistance. In today's world, it's crazy. So maybe you could say, hey, if you need help organizing your files or doing this or that, I know I can't be on set, but maybe I could help somehow. You know, show them your passion and your need to do it, I think, and eventually they're going to remember you. And
Right.
when things get better, we'll all be happy and harmonious again, and that won't have enough time to even talk, let alone do things like this.
The
But
fire
that's it,
hose
you
will
know.
be turned
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Be passionate and be part of the work, part of the solution. You know. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
You're awesome, man.
Ah, thank you. And this
Yeah.
is all really fine and well, and I love the stuff, and I love sound, and I love what I do. But what's really important is that everybody goes out and votes, and
Yeah.
you know,
Totally.
this is all some sideline, truly my
Totally.
side hustle.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So with that said, you know, everybody have a great, you know, day and a weekend coming up soon. And please check out, we'll answer your questions, Scott and myself, for the ones that we did not get to. All right. Virtual wave, Scott. Take care, guys.
Thanks everybody for being here.